Graduation night, I was not hit with a fist, but with a verbal sentence. No one cares. They left me at the bus station with a crumpled $10 bill. 10 years later. As I stepped out of the limo at Northlake, my rich grandfather called the press, and when the recorders turned on, my family's buried secrets began to unravel. My name is Paisley Banks. The night I graduated, I learned what a hit felt like. It was not a fist, it was the click of a door lock. Ashford, Indiana. The bus station smelled like diesel fumes and wet concrete. The overhead sodium lights sputtered, casting a sick, flickering yellow on the pavement. My stepmother, Lorraine, stood by the passenger door of the SUV. She had just tossed a bag onto the curb. My bag. "No one cares," she said. Her voice was flat, an accountant closing a ledger. She slid back into the driver's seat. The door slammed shut, a heavy, final sound. I looked at the passenger window. My father, Dale, stared straight ahead. His hands were on the dashboard, motionless. He did not look at me. In the back, a phone lit up. My stepsister, Carly, was filming. The red record light was on. She was smiling, capturing the perfect, humiliating social media story. The SUV pulled away, its red taillights disappearing into the drizzle. They had left me. The hit was not just the abandonment, it was a sequence, a coordinated strike. Earlier that day, my key to the small apartment they rented for me stopped working. My supplemental credit card, the one for gas and groceries, was declined at the campus bookstore. When I finally got home, logged onto the Wi-Fi before they cut that too, I saw Carly's post, a picture of me walking away, captioned, "The freeloader is finally getting kicked out. About time." Lorraine had timed it perfectly, waiting until the diploma was in my hand. Now, I stood under the flickering light. The air was damp. My phone battery showed 3%. In my pocket, the cap and gown felt bulky, ridiculous, and in my hand, a single $10 bill, crumpled from Lorraine's grip. That was my inheritance, $10 and a degree in industrial engineering. The drizzle turned colder. I moved, automatic, seeking shelter. The bus station was closed, locked tight. Across the street, a convenience store. The quick stop had a small overhang. I huddled under it, pressing myself against the glass. The fluorescent light inside felt like an interrogation lamp. I pulled a small notebook from my bag, the one I used for process flow charts. I wrote 3 lines, not a plan, a commitment. 1. Survive tonight. 2. Trust no one but myself. 3. Never be this cold again. The sun rose. It felt gray, diluted. My phone was dead. My body ached from sleeping sitting up against a brick wall. I used $2 of the 10 on a bottle of water and used the store's restroom to wash my face. I looked pale, eyes too wide. I walked 3 blocks toward the industrial park. I smelled coffee and grease. The Depot Diner, a sign in the window, handwritten, "Dishwasher wanted, inquire within." I inquired. A woman named Mrs. Alvarez, her hair in a tight bun, looked me up and down. I was still wearing the jeans and sweatshirt from graduation. "You look like you're running from something," she said, her voice sharp but not unkind. "I am running to something," I replied. "A job." She pointed to the back. "The sink is there. You start now. You get breakfast. You break a dish. It comes out of your pay." I started then. As I scrubbed burnt egg off a skillet, my hands raw in the scalding water, the memory cut through. It was fast, something I had not processed in the chaos of the driveway. Just before Lorraine slammed the door, I had reached for the handle, thinking she had forgotten my last box. On the center console, next to her planner, was a manila envelope. It was thick. It had fallen slightly, revealing the logo embossed on the corner. Barrow and Finch, attorneys at law. I knew that name. I had heard my father whisper it. But it was the note, scrawled on a yellow sticky tab attached to the front, that my brain had captured like a photograph. It said, Banks Estate. My mother's family name, my grandfather's name, At that moment, scrubbing a pan in the back of a diner, the cold realization settled in. This was not just abandonment. It was not just cruelty. It was a calculated removal. Lorraine was not just my stepmother. She was an accountant. She did not just manage household budgets. She was managing assets. And Paisley Banks, had just been officially liquidated. I had been cut out of the system, not just the family. I was cut off from the information. That, I realized, was the real weapon. I kept scrubbing. The water was hot, but I was still cold. My childhood was a lesson in logistics. Specifically, the logistics of the unwanted. I was the folding chair at the end of the dining table. When guests came, Dale and Lorraine would set the main table, the good china, the heavy silver. Carly would sit next to her mother, and at the very end, often angled awkwardly toward the kitchen doorway, was my seat, a cold metal folding chair, pulled from the hall closet. I was close enough to hear the kitchen extractor fan, close enough to feel the draft every time the door swung open, but just far enough away to be outside the main circle of conversation. I was an addendum, an item to be stored. This defined everything. Christmas was a case study in resource allocation. Carly would get the new bicycle, the one with the pink tassels, its tires still smelling of factory rubber. I would receive a box of her old clothes, washed in the harsh detergent Lorraine favored, or a textbook for a class I was not even taking, its pages already filled with Carly's bored, loopy margin notes. "Be grateful," Lorraine would say, her eyes sharp. "Some children get nothing." She was teaching me my place. The system was clear. Carly was a primary investment. I was a cost to be minimized. But my mind did not work like theirs. They saw surfaces. I saw systems. I was obsessed with how things connected. I took apart the broken toaster and fixed it. I rewired the doorbell. I spent an entire summer dismantling a junked lawnmower engine just to understand the flow of fuel to spark. They called it tinkering. They called it messy. In my junior year of high school, I won the state science fair. My project was a low-cost, gravity-fed water filtration system, built from plastic buckets, sand, and charcoal. It was designed for rural areas, efficient, cheap, and easily assembled. I stood next to my display for 2 days, explaining flow rates and particle capture. The judges were impressed. I won. I brought home the blue ribbon and the small trophy. I set it on the kitchen counter. Lorraine glanced at it while she was sorting coupons. "That's nice," she said, not looking up. "Don't let it clutter the counter. Put it in your room." Carly, I remember, just laughed. "Nerd," she said, and went back to her phone. The system was not designed to acknowledge my successes. It was designed to absorb them, neutralize them, and file them away. When I got my acceptance letter to the Midwest Technical Institute, I thought, for a moment, that this was the way out. It was not a full ride. It was a partial scholarship for logistics and industrial engineering. Partial. The word was a weight. It meant I would have to work, probably full-time, while studying. I showed the letter to Lorraine at the dinner table. She was balancing the checkbook. She scanned the paper. Her pen stopped moving. "Logistics," she said, her lip curling just slightly. "That's a man's field. Paisley, all trucks and warehouses. You won't last." "It's about efficiency," I tried to explain. "Optimizing systems." "It's about heavy lifting," she countered. "And you're not built for it. Besides, this scholarship is only partial. We're not footing the bill for the rest. You'll have to find a way." The message was clear. This was not a celebration. It was another problem I had created for her. So I found a way. I worked 2 jobs, but my real education happened at the public library. In the back, by the history section, were 3 old desktop computers. They ran on a slow, grinding operating system, but they had Excel. While Carly was at parties, I was at that library until it closed at 9 p.m. I taught myself advanced spreadsheet functions. I learned database queries. I found open-source mapping software and taught myself the fundamentals of routing. I would spend hours creating hypothetical problems. A fleet of 10 pizza delivery cars in a 3-mile radius. A winter storm. How do you get the most pizzas delivered, hot, with the least amount of fuel? I built algorithms in those spreadsheets. I was obsessed with the last mile problem. That final, most expensive part of any delivery. I was living the last mile problem. I was the package nobody knew how to deliver. I was building my own map, in secret. There was another map, one I was not allowed to see. The map of my mother's family. My grandfather, Everett Banks. My mother, before she died, used to tell me stories about him, a man who built things, who understood systems, just like me. After she was gone and Dale married Lorraine, that connection was severed. Or so I thought. I remember, one Christmas, I must have been 12. A card arrived. It was thick, cream-colored, with an embossed logo. It was addressed to me. I saw the return address. Lake Forest. I saw the name. Everett Banks. Before I could open it, Lorraine plucked it from my hand. "Junk advertising," she said, her voice breezy. She tore it in half and dropped it into the kitchen trash, right on top of the coffee grounds. I just stood there, stunned. "It was for me," I whispered. "It was clutter," she said. "Go do your homework." After that, the mail always went through her. She would stand at the counter, sorting, bills, catalogs, Carly's magazines, and sometimes I would see it, the thick cream-colored envelope. She would not even look at me. She would just slide it, unopened, into the stack of junk mail destined for the recycling bin. She was not just severing a connection. She was erasing the proof that a connection even existed. She was systematically editing my grandfather out of my life. When I was 16, I found an old address book of my mother's. His number was in it. My hands were shaking. I saved up money from my library job. Ironic, I know, and bought a prepaid calling card. I went to the payphone outside the convenience store. I dialed the numbers. I waited. A click, then a recorded voice. Cold, robotic. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again." I tried 3 more times. No longer in service. I stood there, in the cold, listening to the dial tone. The bridge was out. The line was cut. Lorraine had not just blocked the mail. She had outlasted the phone number. She had waited me out. That was the real injury. It was not physical. Lorraine never laid a hand on me. Dale was never violent, only absent. The wound was deeper. It was the calculated, systematic strangulation of opportunity. It was the censorship of my mail. It was the dismissal of my talent. It was the constant, low-level hum of, "You are not worth the investment." It was the quiet, daily act of being erased. They were not trying to hurt me. They were trying to make me disappear, to make me so small, so quiet, and so resource-starved that I would simply fold up, like that metal chair, and be put away in the closet. That night, at the payphone, I made a vow. It was not a vow of revenge. I did not know that word yet. It was a vow of existence. They thought I was a cost. I would become an asset. They thought I was a liability. I would become an engineer. They had cut all my lifelines, ignored my map, and thrown away my invitations. Fine. I would escape. I would get out. And I would do it using a map of my own design. One they could never read, never understand, and never, ever take away from me. The steam from the dish pit at the Depot Diner was a constant, scalding fog. For the first 2 days, my hands were raw, red, and swollen. By the 3rd day, they were just numb. I worked from the 5 a.m. prep shift until the 2 p.m. lunch close, then came back for the 5 to 9 dinner rush. I was fast, I was quiet, and I kept my head down. Mrs. Alvarez watched me. On the 4th night, a bad thunderstorm hit, turning the streets into cold rivers. The diner was empty. As I was wiping down the last of the steel counters, she jerked her head toward the back. "Stockroom's dry," she said, not looking at me. "Potatoes won't mind the company. Don't be here when the bread truck arrives at 4. I slept on a stack of flour sacks. the smell of yeast and cardboard in the air. It was the first time I had been warm and dry in days. I did not cry. Crying was inefficient. My education in logistics truly began with Ben, the diner's oldest waiter. He was in his late 60s, with a sharp, bird-like focus. He moved through the crowded diner like a fluid. He saw me watching him one busy Saturday. "You're watching the flow, aren't you, kid?" he said, as he loaded 3 heavy trays onto his arms. "You're not backtracking," I said. "You only move clockwise around the tables." He smiled, a rare, thin crack in his face. "One-way path, kid. Never go back for the salt. Carry it on the first trip. Never go to the kitchen empty-handed. Take the dirty dishes, even if it's just 1 cup." He showed me how he balanced the trays. It's not strength, it's distribution. Same as loading a flatbed. Put the weight on the axle, not the edges. He was teaching me his system. I started applying it to the dish pit. I reorganized the flow. Dirty dishes in. Soak, spray, rack, wash, dry, stack. I created a one-way path for the busboys so they would not collide with me. I cut the dish turnaround time by 20%. But I was still just a dishwasher. I started a new notebook. The bottleneck log. I noted the diner's inefficiencies. 7:30 a.m. The coffee rush. Mrs. Alvarez and Ben collided at the single coffee machine. Time lost. 30 seconds per customer. 9:01 a.m. The produce truck arrived, blocking the back alley. The cooks had to wait for eggs. Time lost. 10 minutes. 3 p.m. Road construction on Main Street. The delivery orders were late. I needed more. The diner was survival, but it was not a future. I saw a help wanted sign at Everline Freight, a small, dusty shipping company in the industrial park. Part-time filing, it said. The manager was Tom Whitman. His desk was a mountain range of manifests, invoices, and clipboards. He looked exhausted. He glanced at my one-page resume. "Industrial engineering degree," he said, rubbing his eyes. "And you're washing dishes at the depot?" "I'm observing systems," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "Your trucks are a system. I can see from your sign-in sheet that your drivers are waiting for their manifests. That's a bottleneck." He stared at me. "You got that from my sign-in sheet?" "You're losing 10 minutes per driver, per shift. Just in this room. I can fix that. But I'll start with the filing." He hired me for 4 hours every afternoon. I was paid to file. But I was really reading. I read the run sheets. I saw the routes. I saw the waste. 2 different trucks delivering to the same industrial park, 3 hours apart. Drivers taking long left turns across heavy traffic instead of looping for 3 simple rights. Routes that were identical to the ones from 10 years ago, before the new highway bypass was built. It was chaos. It was Lorraine's household, but with 18-wheelers. On Sunday, my one day off, I went to the public library. I sat at the old desktop in the back. I opened a new Excel file. I named it Route Swift V0.1. I took the manifests from one of Tom's most chaotic routes. 10 addresses. I typed them in. I started building the formulas, calculating distances, average speeds, stop times. It was clunky, it was slow, but it was a start. The next day, I gave Tom a single sheet of paper. "Driver 4, I said. "He has 12 stops today. Tell him to do them in this order, not his usual order, this one." He was skeptical. "His route is his route, kid." "Just try it," I said. "This order will save him 37 minutes and 6 miles. Tom tried it. Maybe he was desperate. At the end of the day, driver 4 came in, confused. "I finished early. Traffic was great." Tom looked at me. "How?" "I routed him. I can do it for all of them." He moved me from the filing cabinet to the dispatch desk. I was not filing anymore. I was learning to run the board. The diner, the dispatch desk, the library, that was my life. I was saving every dollar. The $10 bill Lorraine had given me was pinned to the inside cover of my notebook, a seed fund. After 2 months, I had enough. First, last, and security. It was an attic loft above the spin-cycle laundromat. The stairs were outside, and the whole place rattled when the big dryers were on. It smelled like warm bleach and soap. The first night, I had no furniture, just my bag. The single window was drafty. I was cold. I unpacked my bag, and at the bottom was the black gown from graduation. I unfolded it. It was thin, synthetic, and smelled like the bus station. I used it as a blanket. My world was small, but it was mine. I was running my own system. I saw an ad taped to the library's bulletin board, a scholarship for an online professional certificate from the National Institute of Logistics. I applied. I used my work at Everline as my case study, complete with data on the time and fuel I had saved the company. I got the scholarship. So I added a fourth location to my route: diner, dispatch, library, loft, late at night, under the single buzzing bulb of my attic. I studied. I learned the academic language for the things I knew in my bones: supply chain management, last mile optimization, fleet telematics. I was not just surviving, I was learning. I wrote a new line in my notebook, under my 3 survival rules. It was a principle. Reduce 1 mile on 1,000 trips. That equals 1 driver's monthly salary. It was not a theory. It was rent. It was heat. It was the cost of a blanket. I looked at my laptop screen. The library let me check out an old one. Route Swift VA.1 was now VA.2. It had a basic map. The addresses I typed in no longer just made a list. They appeared on the screen. Small, pulsing dots, like fireflies. It was my language, and I was finally becoming fluent. The Excel spreadsheets were not enough. They were static, a snapshot of a problem that was already in the past. I was not just solving yesterday's routes. I was trying to predict tomorrow's. I needed something that could breathe. I needed something that could learn. I cashed out my savings from the diner in Everline. I stopped sleeping on the flour sacks. Mrs. Alvarez had hired a new full-time dishwasher, and my time at the depot was done. I poured everything I had, every dollar, every minute, into building a web application. My loft above the spin cycle became a command center. I had one good monitor, bought secondhand, and the old library laptop. The air was perpetually warm and damp, smelling of detergent. I coded through the night, the rhythmic thud of the industrial dryers below me like a metronome. I was trying to capture the invisible pulse of the city, the flow of goods, the choke points of traffic, the unseen patterns that meant the difference between profit and loss, between a hot meal and a cold one. After 3 months of 16-hour days, I had it. Route Swift. It was a simple interface, a login, a field to upload a CSV of addresses, and a single button: optimize. It was time to see if it worked outside my own simulations. I needed a client, a small one who was losing money and knew it. I found Petals and Pines, a local floral shop with 1 delivery van and a frantic owner. I walked in, my laptop under my arm. The owner, a woman named Sarah, looked as exhausted as Tom Whitman. "I'm not buying new software," she said, cutting me off before I even spoke. "I can't even afford the gas for this week's weddings." "I'm not selling it," I said. "I'm giving it to you, for free, for 1 week. In exchange, you give me your data." I set her up. I showed her driver how to upload the day's addresses. He grumbled, but he did it. I did not sleep that week. I just watched my server logs. I watched the route my algorithm generated, and I compared it to the GPS data from the driver's phone. At the end of the week, I went back to the shop. Sarah was at the counter, not looking frantic. She was smiling. 18%, she said. "What?" 18%. That's what I saved on fuel, in 1 week. I thought the numbers were wrong, so I checked them, twice. The driver's overtime is down, and he's getting home 2 hours earlier. He's happier. What is this thing? "It's just math," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's magic," she said. "I'll pay for it." She was my first paying customer, but more importantly, she was my first feedback loop. Route Swift was not just a product, it was a service. I built a simple feedback form directly into the app. What went wrong today? Sarah's driver would type. The app sent me down Oak Street, but it's closed for construction until Friday. That night, I would be awake, coding. I pulled the municipal data for road closures. I tweaked the algorithm to weigh that data source. I hit deploy. The next morning, the driver's app routed him around Oak Street. This was the loop. Feedback, tweak, deploy. I was not just building a map. I was building a conversation. Tom Whitman at Everline Freight was my next call. He had watched my progress. He had seen me go from a part-time filer to a dispatch analyst. He trusted my numbers. Kid, he said over the phone, I'm happy for you. That flower shop is great, but you're thinking too small. You're not built for flower shops. You're built for freight. He introduced me to McGree Wholesale. They were not a flower shop. They were a regional distributor. They had a fleet of 30 trucks. I walked into their conference room. It was all glass and brushed steel. I was wearing my only good blazer, bought at a thrift store. I did not talk about magic. I did not talk about vision. I opened my laptop and showed them the data. This is your current fleet, I said, pulling up a map of their routes. You have a deadhead average of 21%. That's empty miles. You're paying drivers to haul air. My system can get that under 12%. That's a saving of $40,000 a month. Not in theory, in practice. They were quiet. They looked at each other. They looked at me. Where did you go to school? One of them asked. Midwest Technical Institute, I said, but I learned this at the public library. I left with a signed contract. It was not for a week. It was for a year. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. The first thing I did was walk from the bus station. I still took the bus. To a small frame shop. I took the crumpled $10 bill from my notebook. It was faded, soft as cloth. I want this framed, I told the man. He looked at the bill. He looked at me. The bill? Or the frame? The bill? I took it back to my loft. I did not have a desk. I had a folding table. I propped the framed $10 bill against the wall, right next to my monitor. My seed funding. The first investment. With the McGree contract, I could not work from my loft anymore. I needed real internet, a real address. I needed to be in a different city. Ashford was my past. I needed Northlake. It was the regional hub. I rented a single desk at a co-working space called The Foundry. It was a reclaimed warehouse, all exposed brick and high-speed fiber. It was full of people like me, people building things from nothing. I put the framed $10 bill on my new desk. I was not just Paisley anymore. I was a business. Root Swift Technologies. I needed help. The feedback loop was getting too fast for one person. I posted a flyer at the Midwest Tech campus. Interns wanted, must love solving impossible problems, must hate wasting gas. I hired 3, a coder, a data analyst, and a UX designer. They were young, smart, and they did not care that I was running a company from a single rented desk. They cared about the problem. On their first day, I gave them their only rule. We have one metric, I told them, deadhead miles, the percentage of time a truck is driving empty. Our clients are paying for it. The environment is paying for it. Our job is to kill it. The internal company law is this. Deadhead miles must be less than or equal to 12%, always. We were a small, tight unit. We were building, tweaking, deploying. Then, the snowstorm hit. It was not a storm. It was a blizzard, the kind that shuts down a state. It hit in January. The governor declared a state of emergency. The power grid was failing. The highways were closed. The city, the entire invisible pulse I had been tracking, just stopped. My phone rang. It was not a client. It was the county's emergency operations center. Are you the Root Swift lady? A voice, cracked with exhaustion, asked. I am. How can I help? We have a problem. A big one. We have 6 field hospitals set up. Shelters, people on oxygen. But our generators are running low on fuel. And we have a new shipment of portable generators stuck at the National Guard Armory. The roads are a mess. We have plows, but we don't know where to send them first. We're running blind. We heard you. See things. On maps. This was not a problem I could solve with my existing algorithm. This was not about saving gas. This was about saving lives. For the next 48 hours, the four of us did not leave the foundry. We drank stale coffee and coded. We tore down our commercial algorithm. We built a new one. We integrated data from the snowplow GPS, the police dispatch, the hospital status reports. We were not routing for efficiency anymore. We were routing for priority. Hospital A, 2 hours of oxygen left. Generator B, stuck on Highway 40. Plow C, closest, but stuck in a drift. We rerouted the plow. We found a path. Our map was the only map that mattered. It was a live, breathing thing. My screen was a network of glowing lines, connecting a generator to a hospital, connecting a plow to a route, connecting a person to a chance. We did it. We got the generators to the hospitals. We kept the lights on. 2 days later, when the snow had stopped, a local reporter came to the foundry. She had heard the story from the EOC. She interviewed me. She looked at my single desk, my 3 exhausted interns sleeping on beanbags, and the framed $10 bill on my desk. She asked me about my background. I did not tell her everything. I told her what mattered. I know what it's like to be stranded, I said. I know what it's like to be cold and have no one coming for you. This technology, it's about making sure that when the system breaks down, we can build a new one, fast. The next Sunday, the story ran on the front page of the North Lake Gazette. The headline read, "From Bus Stop to Blueprint." It showed a picture of me, looking tired, pointing at the map on the screen. The next day, I went to the North Lake courthouse. I filled out the paperwork. It was a simple form, but it felt heavier than any contract. I filed for a legal name change. I was not Paisley, the girl my father and Lorraine had discarded. I was not the freeloader. I was claiming the name from the envelope Lorraine had hidden, the name from the mail she had blocked, the name that connected me to the man who built things, the man I had never met. I walked out of the courthouse. My name was Paisley Banks, and I was just getting started. The North Lake Gazette article was not just a local story. In the age of the internet, it was a data packet, and it traveled. It took less than 24 hours for the digital ripple to reach Ashford. My interns, who had taken to monitoring social media mentions of RootSwift, showed me the first ping. It was a private, locked Instagram account, Carly's. She had screenshotted the article. Her caption was not congratulatory. It was proprietary. OMG, my long-lost stepsister is famous. So proud of how the family supported her dreams. A comment below it, from one of her friends. Wait, isn't that the one your mom said was a total freeloader? Carly's reply. LOL, water under the bridge. Mom is just so excited to reconnect. Family is everything. I closed the laptop. My hands were perfectly steady. The PR campaign had begun. Lorraine was not just an accountant. She was a narrative manager. She was reframing the story, absorbing my success and claiming it as a family-sponsored project. Supported her dreams. The lie was so clean, so audacious. It was almost impressive. A week later, the official invitation arrived. It was not a text or a DM. It was a formal email from an aunt I barely remembered, Aunt Melissa. My dearest Paisley, it began. It has been too long. We are all just bursting with pride over your article. What a journey. You must come to the 10-year family reunion. It's right in your new city, Northlake. We're holding it at the Northlake Community Hall in 2 weeks. Please, please say you'll come. We are all just so anxious to welcome you home. The timing was perfect. The venue was public. The invitation was a strategic move. Disguised as a warm, fuzzy olive branch, they were setting a stage. If I refused, I was the cold, ungrateful one who spurned her family. If I accepted, I was walking into their narrative. I would be their prop. Carly would get 1,000 photos. Lorraine would stand beside me, the picture of the proud, forgiving stepmother. I stared at the email. I was an engineer. You do not avoid a system. You analyze it, find the weak points, and then you take control of it. I replied to Aunt Melissa, I would be honored to attend. I'm so looking forward to seeing everyone. Then I made 2 phone calls. The first was to a lawyer, not for a lawsuit, for an incorporation. I had been planning it for a month, ever since the McGree contract. I need to set up a foundation, I told the lawyer. The bank's foundation. Its purpose is to fund community infrastructure projects. My second call was to the Northlake Community Hall. I spoke to the event manager. I'm with the bank's foundation, I said. We'd like to make an anonymous donation. We're very interested in the upcoming reunion for the Ashford families. We would like to sponsor the entire event. Full cost. Catering, lighting, security. The only condition is that our name is not mentioned as the sponsor. Just a friend of the community. The event manager was thrilled. The donation was finalized in an hour. I now controlled the venue. I controlled the guest list. I controlled the catering. They were walking onto my stage, not the other way around. I had one more thing to do. My success felt hollow if it was only for me. That article. From bus stop to blueprint. It was a good headline, but it was missing the point. It was not about me. It was about the fact that a bus stop should never have to be a blueprint. I called the incorporation lawyer back. I need to set up a second fund. This one is different. It's the bus stop fund. Its mission is to provide immediate, no-questions-asked microgrants and temporary housing for youths aged 18 to 21 who are aging out of foster care or find themselves without a support system. I seeded it with the first significant check from Route Swift. It was the most important algorithm I had ever written. A few days later, a message appeared in the contact form on the Route Swift website. It was not a sales inquiry. The name was Marty G. The message was short. I used to be the mail carrier on the Ashford rural route. I delivered to your father's house for 20 years. I read that article about you. Your name. Banks. You're Everett Banks's granddaughter, aren't you? He used to send mail. All the time. Thick letters. Christmas. Your birthday. Every year. He never stopped. I always wondered if you got them. Someone was always particular about the mail at that house. Just thought you should know. I'm retired now. Glad you made it, kid. I went cold. Colder than I was at the bus station. Someone was always particular about the mail. Lorraine, the junk mail, the cream-colored envelopes. He never stopped. It was not a memory. It was a lead. I needed a different kind of professional. I was a logistics engineer. I needed a legal engineer. Someone who specialized in deconstructing complex, hidden systems. I found Harper Quinn. Quinn & Rowe was not a big firm. It was a 2-person office in a clean, modern building. Harper Quinn was not old and dusty. She was my age, with sharp eyes and a laptop covered in data privacy stickers. She did not practice family law. She practiced information law and forensic estate litigation. I sat in her office. I did not tell her my life story. I did not cry. I gave her data points. I'm not here about a will, I said, sliding a printout of Marty's message across the desk. I'm here about a system. 10 years ago, I was removed from my home. I believe my removal was part of a larger, long-term strategy to sever my connection to my maternal grandfather, Everett Banks. I pointed to the message. I believe the primary mechanism for this was mail interception, illegal mail interception. Harper read the message. She was very still. Who was particular about the mail? Harper asked. My stepmother, Lorraine. She's an accountant. Accountants are good at systems, Harper said, and good at justifying them. What do you want, Paisley? I want the log files, I said. I want the receipts. I want to know if her system had a legal basis, and if it did, when it expired. Harper smiled. It was the smile of a predator. This is not a will. This is a trace. I can do this. Harper Quinn was fast. She did not start with law libraries. She started with the United States Postal Service. A week later, she called me. Meeting? My office? Now? I walked in. The conference table was clean except for one file. "You were right," Harper said. "It was a system, and it was, for a time, legal." She slid a document across the table. It was a photocopy of a Postal Service Form 3801A, application for postal intercept and guardianship. "When your mother died," Harper explained, "your grandfather, Everett, apparently tried to set up a direct trust for you. Your father, Dale, contested it, claiming you were a minor and should not be managed by an outside party. Instead, he and Lorraine filed this. It gave Lorraine, as your legal step-guardian, the right to manage and curate all non-legal correspondence sent to you. For your emotional protection, it was signed by your father." I felt sick. So it was legal. She was allowed to do it. "Was," Harper said, holding up a finger. "Look at the expiration date." I scanned the document. My eyes landed on the box. "This authorization expires upon the recipient's 18th birthday, or the legal age of majority." My 18th birthday. "That was 9 years ago," I whispered. "That was 9 years ago," Harper confirmed. "For 9 years, she has been, according to the federal government, actively and knowingly committing mail fraud. She kept using an expired order to intercept your correspondence." Harper slid a second file across the table. "It gets better. Once I had the authorization, I was able to subpoena the post office box records she maintained on the side, and from there, I cross-referenced her financial records. Who was handling this estate management for her? Who was advising her on the bank's estate?" She tapped the file. "Barrow and Finch," I said. Harper's eyes widened. "How did you know?" "I saw an envelope. On the day I left, it was on the console of the SUV. Barrow and Finch," Harper said, "has been sending your stepmother quarterly invoices for consultation on the bank's estate for the last 10 years. She's been paying them, not from her account, but from a family trust account. She was using your father's money, or maybe even your grandfather's money, to pay lawyers to help her systematically and illegally block you from that exact estate." The hit. It was not just a door slamming, it was this, a decade-long, meticulously documented, invoice-supported campaign of erasure. I stood up. I looked at the file, the authorization, the invoices, the timeline. "The reunion is in 3 days," I said. Harper looked at me. "What are you going to do? We can file a cease and desist. We can file an injunction. We can go to the U.S. Postal Inspector." I shook my head. "No, not yet." I picked up the file. "I'm an engineer. Harper, you don't just dump the data. You wait for the presentation. They've set the stage. I've sponsored the lighting. Now I have the script." I walked out of her office. I was not angry. I was optimized. I had the evidence. I had the timeline. I was not going to a reunion to confront anyone. I was going to a meeting to present my findings, and I was going to do it on my terms, under my lights, on my stage. The data collection phase was over. The deployment phase was about to begin. The Blacktown car was silent. It did not roll to a stop. It arrived. Through the tinted glass, the Northlake Community Hall looked ordinary, almost quaint. Strings of yellow party lights were strung from the eaves, and their blurry reflections swam across the limo's polished door as we came to a halt. The damp night air muted the sound of chatter from inside. My driver, a professional I had hired for the evening, opened the door. I stepped out. The air smelled like cut grass and car exhaust. I walked through the double doors. The lobby was bright, filled with the scent of catered pasta and cheap perfume. A small stage was set up at the far end of the room, and a man I did not recognize, probably one of Aunt Melissa's friends, was at the microphone. "And a huge round of applause for our anonymous benefactor," he was saying, "who so generously sponsored tonight's entire event. Whoever you are, thank you for bringing this family together." The room, filled with faces I vaguely recognized, applauded politely. I smiled. A small, private closing of a ledger. I walked to the check-in table. A very surprised-looking cousin, one of the younger ones, was manning a guest book. "Name?" she asked, not looking up. "Paisley," I said. Her head snapped up. I took the pen from her nerveless fingers and opened the book. I signed my name. The ink flowed smoothly, dark and permanent, Paisley Banks, and then I added a second line, Root Swift Technologies. I was not here as a long-lost relative. I was here as a CEO. I moved into the room. I saw them, Lorraine and Carly. They were standing by the punch bowl, laughing with Aunt Melissa. Lorraine was wearing a floral dress, her hair perfectly coiffed. She looked exactly the same. An accountant, calculating the social value of every smile. Her eyes scanned the room, passed right over me, and kept going. She was looking for a ghost. She was looking for the 18-year-old girl she had left at a bus station. The girl in the sweatshirt and jeans. That girl was gone. This woman, in a tailored, dark blue sheath dress and low heels, did not register. But Carly saw me. Her laugh died in her throat. Her phone, which was permanently in her hand, almost slipped. Her eyes, so used to filters and screens, struggled to process the analog data in front of them. She knew the face, but then her gaze fixed on a spot just at my hairline, above my right temple, a tiny, white scar, from a fall I took when I was 6, a fall she had caused by pushing me off the swing set. It was the one detail she would remember. She went pale. The blood drained from her face. She knew. Aunt Melissa followed Carly's gaze. Her eyes went wide. Oh my goodness. Paisley? Is that you? The music, a bad 80s playlist, suddenly felt very loud. The room's chatter quieted. Hello, Aunt Melissa? I said. My voice was calm. You're here. You look wonderful. She fumbled, grabbing the microphone from the man on stage. Everyone, look, our Paisley. She's here. She's come home. A spatter of confused applause. Lorraine's head whipped around. Her face was a mask of pure, unfiltered shock. This was not in her ledger. This was an uncalculated variable. Paisley, Aunt Melissa said, shoving the microphone toward me. Please, come up. Say a few words. We've all missed you so much. This was it, the stage they had set, the stage I had paid for. I walked up the 2 steps. I took the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces. My father, Dale, was in the back, by the bar, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Lorraine was moving toward the stage, her PR smile clicking into place. Thank you, Aunt Melissa, I said. The speakers gave a small squeak, then settled. My voice, calm and amplified, filled the hall. It's good to see all of you. It's been a long time, 10 years, in fact. I paused. I looked at Lorraine, who was now standing at the foot of the steps, ready to ascend. The last time I saw some of you, I continued, my voice even, was on my graduation night from Midwest Tech. It was a significant night. I was taught a very important lesson. After the ceremony, I was driven to the Ashford bus station, and I was left there with a $10 bill and a final clear piece of advice: no one cares. The room was silent. You could hear the ice shifting in the punch bowl. I had my diploma, I had my $10, and I was alone. I spent that night, and many nights after, learning to navigate a system that is not built for people who are left behind. I learned that no one caring is a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you let it be. I looked at the faces. Shock, discomfort. This was not the warm, fuzzy reunion speech they were expecting. I am here tonight to say that I care, I said, and to make sure that the next young person who finds themselves at that bus stop is not left to wait alone. I pivoted. This was not about them. This was about the work. My company, Root Swift, has partnered with my new foundation, the Banks Foundation, to launch a new initiative. It's called the Bus Stop Fund. It's a rapid response fund for transitional-aged youth in Indiana. As of tonight, it is officially active, and I am pleased to announce that in its first year, we will be funding 50 full-ride scholarships and housing grants. Stunned silence. Then, in the back, someone, a stranger, a +1, started to clap. The sound spread. Lorraine saw her opening. The PR had shifted. She bounded up the steps, her arms wide, her face a mask of manufactured tears. "Oh, Paisley, what a wonderful... We are so proud of you. We knew you had it in you." She was coming in for the hug, for the photograph, for the story Carly was already framing on her phone. I did not move. I did not flinch. As her arms came around me, I simply took one small, firm step back. It was not a push. It was not a rejection. It was a boundary. I kept one hand on the microphone, the other at my side. I gave her a small, respectful nod. Lorraine's arms, which had been aimed for a hug, found only empty air. They hung, awkwardly, for a moment, before she dropped them to her sides. Her smile flickered, the voltage dropping. The applause died. "I need some air," I said quietly, handing the microphone back to a stunned Aunt Melissa. I walked off the stage, past my father, who would not meet my eyes, and pushed open the doors to the side patio. The air was cold. I stood by a small, wrought iron table. The yellow string lights were out here, too. I reached into my clutch. I took out the original, faded, soft as cloth $10 bill, the one I had saved for a decade. I placed it in the center of the table. This was not a confrontation. This was not a fight. This was a balance sheet. This was the opening cost. This was transparency, not nagging. This was the new boundary. I heard a noise, a van door sliding shut. A new light, bright and harsh, flooded the patio. A WNLK Channel 4 news van was parked on the grass. A reporter and a cameraman were walking quickly toward me. They had gotten the press release about the bus stop fund I had scheduled to go out an hour ago. The cameraman framed his shot. Me, the empty hall visible through the glass doors, and the small, lonely $10 bill, illuminated on the table. The crowd inside pressed against the windows. They were silent, watching the new development, a real-life drama, unfolding right in front of them. My phone, which I had placed on the table next to the money, began to buzz, a bright, white light in the dark. I looked at the screen. Private number. The cameras were rolling. The entire family was watching. I knew, with absolute certainty, this call was the one. This was the call that would change the game. The call I had been waiting 10 years to receive. The buzzing on the metal table was insistent. The bright camera light from the Channel 4 crew turned the phone into a pulsing white rectangle. The reporter held her microphone out, waiting. I answered the call. "We are 2 minutes out," a woman's voice said, crisp and unknown. "Do not move. He is coming to you." The line clicked dead. "Who was that?" the reporter asked, her eyes sharp. Before I could answer, a new set, a different kind of light, warm and yellow, swept across the patio. It was not a police car or an ambulance. It was the deep, powerful headlights of a vintage automobile, a car from another era. It crunched onto the gravel path, a place no car was supposed to be, and stopped, perfectly centered, its engine a low, confident thrum. It was a Packard, a deep, gleaming black, so polished it reflected the yellow party lights like stars. The WNLK cameraman, startled, swung his light from me to the car. A driver in a simple black suit got out and opened the rear passenger door. For a moment, nothing. Then, a hand, pale and strong, gripped a simple wooden cane. A man emerged. He was tall, despite a slight stoop. His hair was thick and silver, swept back. He wore a dark, perfectly tailored wool coat, unbuttoned, and a simple gray scarf. He was not frail. He was anchored. He was Everett Banks. He saw me. His eyes, even from 20 yards, were clear. He ignored the news crew. He ignored the family, whose faces were now pressed like pale masks against the glass windows of the hall. He just looked at me. He began to walk. The sound was just the crunch of his shoes on the gravel and the steady thud of his cane. I met him halfway. I did not run. I walked. He stopped a foot in front of me. He looked at my face, his eyes searching. He was looking for my mother. He was looking for me. "Paisley," he said. His voice was a low baritone, rough with an emotion I could not name. Then he did what I had not expected. He dropped the cane. It clattered on the stones. He reached out with both hands and pulled me to him. It was not a gentle, frail hug. It was a grip. It was an anchor. He held the back of my head, his large hand burying itself in my hair, pressing my cheek against the cold wool of his coat. It smelled like cedar and old paper. 10 lost winters, he whispered, his voice shaking. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. I missed 10 winters. I did not cry. I held him back. I just stood. I held on. He pulled back, his hands on my shoulders. His eyes were wet. I did not know. I swear to you, I did not know until I saw that article. From bus stop to blueprint, I knew it was you. Mr. Banks? The reporter, recovering her professional footing, stepped forward, microphone extended. The camera light was blinding, painting us in a harsh, artificial daylight. Everett did not look at her. He reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a thick stack of envelopes, bound with a simple rubber band. They were cream-colored, my mother's envelopes. He pressed them into my hand. They all came back, he said, his voice hardening. Everyone, for 10 years. Return to sender, address unknown. I thought you had moved. I thought you wanted. I did not know. I looked at the stamps, red ink. Return to sender, over and over, dates, Christmas, birthdays, all of them. Mr. Banks, sir, the reporter insisted, moving closer. This is Paisley's family reunion. What is your relationship here? Why were you cut off from your granddaughter? The question hung in the cold air. Inside the hall, I saw Lorraine. Her hand was over her mouth. Dale had backed away from the window, deeper into the shadows. That, Everett said, turning to the reporter, his voice now steel, is the question of the evening, isn't it? He pointed a long, steady finger toward the hall, directly at Lorraine. You should ask her. You should ask Lorraine. Ask her about the postal authorization I gave her after my daughter died. A temporary measure, a bridge of trust, to make sure this child, his hand returned to my shoulder, a grip of iron, was cared for. Ask her why she continued to use that authority for 9 years after it expired. Ask her why she returned every letter, every card, every check I ever sent. The reporter's jaw dropped. She turned, motioning for the cameraman to get a shot of Lorraine through the window. Lorraine stumbled back, disappearing from view. Miss Banks. Another shout. A woman in a dark suit, holding an iPad, was striding toward us from the Packard. His assistant, June. Sir, the call is active. They are all on the line. Put it on speaker, June, he said. June tapped the iPad. A voice, amplified, crackled into the night. It was a conference call. Confirming we have the Associated Press on the line? AP is here, a new voice said. The Tribune? Here. The Gazette? We are here. June? Excellent, June said, her voice like ice. For all units, we are now confirming the location is the Northlake Community Hall. Mr. Banks has a prepared statement regarding the Banks Trust and the fraudulent interception of mail. He is on site. We expect his arrival. Well, he is here now. The press conference is now active. More cars were pulling into the lot. News vans, sedans, the press he had called. My God, he had not just called them, he had scheduled a system deployment. The first reporter, the one from Channel 4, looked completely bewildered. You called them? You planned this? One must always control the flow of information, young lady, Everett said. In the middle of this burgeoning chaos, the arriving cars, the disoriented reporter, the family frozen behind the glass, Everett turned back to me. The noise seemed to fade. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small, ornate, brass key. He pressed it into my empty palm. This is more important, he said, his voice low. Just for me. First River Trust, Box 701, your mother. Your mother was smarter than all of us. She was an engineer, too. I stared at the key. She put a clause in her personal trust, he said, his voice hurried, intense. She did not trust Dale's new wife, not one bit. She made a provision, a condition. The bank's trust clause, it stipulated that the principal of her assets would bypass your father, bypass everyone, and go directly to you, but only if you successfully completed a post-secondary professional certification in a technical field, an engineering degree, a logistics certificate. My blood went cold. The scholarship, the degree, the thing Lorraine had called a man's field. She was protecting you, Everett said, his hand closing over mine, over the key. She was ensuring you had the tools to survive, not just the money. She knew you would find a way. The moment you graduated, the moment you received that degree, this key became yours. Every action taken against you, every piece of mail blocked, was an attempt to stop you from meeting a condition you had already met. My knees felt weak. Ms. Banks, a new reporter, a man with an AP badge, was running, holding a recorder. Ms. Banks, your stepmother is inside claiming this is all a terrible family misunderstanding. Are you planning to file criminal charges? Are you going to sue? All the lights, all the cameras, all the eyes, in the parking lot, in the hall, were on me. I looked at the stack of returned letters in my hand. I looked at the key. I looked at the $10 bill, still sitting on the patio table. A small, forgotten piece of paper that had started everything. I took a breath. I had the data. I had the proof. I am not interested in revenge, I said. My voice was clear. It did not shake. The Channel 4 microphone picked it up. I am a systems analyst, and the system I was in was broken. It was corrupted by bad data and malicious actors. I did not come here to sue. I came here to present my findings. I held up the stack of returned envelopes. This is the audit. We choose light, not darkness, but for the light to work, the truth has to be complete. And the truth is, someone tried to edit me out of my own life. They tried to tell me, and the world, that no one cares. I looked from the cameras, past my grandfather, and to the faces in the window. Tonight, with the launch of the Bus Stop Fund, we started a new system, and now, with my grandfather, we are going to finish auditing the old one. The crowd in the hall was silent. The reporters were scribbling, cameras flashing. The narrative had not just shifted, it had been seized. The story was no longer about a sad family reunion. It was about a decade of deceit and the sudden, explosive arrival of the truth, and everyone, finally, was paying attention. The next morning, the air was sharp and cold, washed clean of the previous night's chaos. The sun was barely over the horizon when I stood with Everett and Harper outside the imposing brass doors of the First River Trust. The bank was not open. Everett did not seem to notice. He simply tapped his cane on the marble, and a prearranged bank manager let us in. We did not speak. The manager led us to the vault, the silence punctuated only by the click of Harper's heels and the heavy, oiled thud of the vault door swinging open. Everett waited outside. He would not enter. "This is between you and your mother," he said, his voice quiet. The manager led us to a wall of brushed silver boxes. He used his key, and I used the brass key Everett had given me. The box slid out with a smooth, heavy sound. It was long and deep. Harper and I took it to a private viewing room. It was sterile, with a single table and 2 chairs. I sat down. My hands were steady. I was not here to grieve. I was here to audit. Harper began to unpack the contents, gloved, like an archaeologist. The first item was a letter, a single, folded sheet of my mother's personal stationery. Her handwriting was elegant, a looping cursive. It was addressed to me, but it was about Lorraine. "My dearest Paisley," I read aloud. My voice did not shake. "If you are reading this, I am gone, and you are grown. I want you to know you are protected. I have made sure. I have also asked Lorraine, Dale's new wife, to be a bridge for you. She is an accountant, so practical. She understands numbers and systems. She has promised to help manage your correspondence, to be your advocate, to make sure you and Everett stay connected. I trust her to be that bridge. I placed the letter on the table. A bridge, I said. Harper's jaw was tight. She was a bridge. All right, a toll bridge. And she closed all the lanes. The next item was a certified copy of the postal authorization. It was the same one Harper had found, but this one had notes. It was a copy from the Ashford post office, with handwritten annotations in the margins. The expiration date, my 18th birthday, was circled. Below it, in a different pen, someone had scribbled, "Per L, extend courtesy." But there was more. Harper pulled out a bundle of pink "while you were out" slips. But from the post office, they were attached to copies of returned mail. They were all stamped, in aggressive purple ink, with a date after my 18th birthday, after the expiration. She continued using it illegally, I whispered, using the Vietnamese term, then corrected myself. She kept using it. She was using an expired authorization, and the post office just let her. They knew her, Harper said, her voice cold. She was the local accountant. She was a pillar of the community. They just extended the courtesy. The final items were the bank statements, a stack of them, from a small, local credit union, under my mother's name. They were linked to a small education fund. Harper opened the first one. A check to the Midwest Technical Institute for $500, for fall semester books, stamped across the front, in red. Returned. She opened the next, another check. Spring semester supplies. Returned. Page after page, a sequential, meticulous record of every attempt my mother had made to help me, all of it choked off at the source. Lorraine had not just blocked Everett, she had blocked my dead mother. We sat in silence. The audit was complete. The numbers were in. The liability was clear. "The bank's trust," Harper said, finally breaking the silence as we sat in her office an hour later. The trust officer had confirmed it via a secure video call. "With your degree and your professional certificates, you met the conditions of your mother's clause the day you graduated. The trust is active. It is yours, free and clear. The purpose, as your mother wrote it, for the seed funding of enterprises that solve systemic problems with social impact." My mother, an engineer, she had given me a mission. "Good," I said. "Then my first directive is simple. The first disbursement, as large as you can make it, is to be wired to the bus stop fund. I want it active by end of day. The second disbursement will capitalize a new division of my company, Root Swift Relief, a permanent, fully funded entity dedicated to emergency and disaster logistics, free of charge to the public." Harper was typing, her fingers flying. "And I," she said, "am filing a formal federal complaint with the United States Postal Inspection Service for 10 years of wire fraud, mail fraud, and illegal use of an expired authorization. It is now sent." She clicked the mouse, a digital gavel. Everett, who had been sitting in the corner, finally spoke. "Good. The money is in motion. The law is in motion. Now, the story." He looked at me, his eyes fierce. "We are holding a press conference this afternoon at the Northlake Hotel. I want every camera that was there last night, and more. Last night, they heard the accusation. Today, they will see the receipts. We will do this so that not one more person, ever again, can say the words, 'No one cares,' and think it is the end of the story." Before I could even process the speed, my phone buzzed, a text, from Carly. "Hey, so crazy last night. Total misunderstanding. Mom is a mess. I see on Twitter everyone's going to the Northlake Hotel. Are you doing like a press thing? We should totally do a collab, like a joint interview, me and you. Showing family unity would be so good for everyone. LMK. I can be there in 20. I looked at the message, the sheer Unadulterated audacity, the transactional request. Collab. I typed one word. No. I hit send. The ballroom at the North Lake Hotel was packed. Everett's team had worked for 3 hours and had filled it. We had not set up a podium. We had set up easels, like a science fair. My fair? I stood at the front. I was not in a sheath dress. I was in my CEO uniform. Dark trousers, a crisp white shirt, a blazer. Thank you for coming, I said. My voice was amplified, clean. My name is Paisley Banks. Last night, I spoke about a broken system. Today, I am here to present the audit of that system. I am an engineer. I do not deal in slander. I deal in data. I will not be answering questions about my feelings. I will be presenting a timeline. I walked to the first easel. It was a blown-up, high-resolution scan of my mother's letter. Item 1, a letter of intent, a mother trusting a bridge to connect her daughter to her family. I moved to the second easel. Item 2, the bridge's legal contract, a postal authorization, which you can see here, clearly expires on this date, my 18th birthday. I moved to the third. Item 3, a series of invoices from the law firm Barrow & Finch, billing Lorraine for consultation on the bank's estate, the same estate she was telling me did not exist. I moved to the fourth. Item 4, a stack of returned bank statements and checks, education funds, blocked, returned. I turned back to the press. The data is clear. This was not a misunderstanding. This was not a lapse in memory. This was a deliberate, 10-year strategy of information suppression and resource deprivation, executed by an accountant who knew exactly what she was doing. Hands shot up, a dozen. Miss Banks! Miss Banks! And then, a commotion at the back. The doors opened. It was Lorraine and Dale. She was marching to the front, my father trailing her like a shadow. "You have no right," she shouted, her voice shrill. Carly was right behind her, phone held high, recording. "This is private. This is a family matter." The cameras all turned. They swarmed her. A reporter from the AP, the same one from last night, pushed his recorder in her face. "Mrs. Lorraine, you are an accountant. Your stepdaughter has presented invoices and a clear timeline. Can you explain your billing from Barrow & Finch? Can you explain why you continued to intercept mail 9 years after your authorization expired? The timeline doesn't seem complex." Lorraine was trapped. The hot lights were on her. The data was on the boards behind me. It's not what it looks like," she stammered. I was protecting the family from outside influence. It's the dates. I don't recall those specific dates. It was all a long time ago. But the dates were on the boards. The invoices were from 6 months ago. "So you are not denying the invoices?" the reporter pressed. Dale, tell them," she snapped, turning to my father. But Dale was staring at the easel with my mother's letter on it. He looked like he had been struck. Lorraine turned back. Her eyes were wide, panicked. She had lost control of the ledger. This is slander. It's just a misunderstanding." The camera zoomed in, capturing every stammer, every drop of sweat, every panicked glance. She was contradicting the facts. She was contradicting the timeline. She was an accountant who could not account for her own actions. She had just given her public deposition, and she had been found liable. Lorraine stammering. It's just a misunderstanding," hung in the air, a weak defense against the wall of data. The hot lights did not waver. The cameras did not blink. The AP reporter, a man who clearly smelled blood, pushed his recorder closer to her. "It seems like a very specific 10-year misunderstanding, ma'am. Can you point to the one invoice, the one postal record that's a misunderstanding?" Lorraine's eyes darted between the easels. She was an accountant trapped in her own cooked books. A different reporter, the woman from Channel 4 who had been on the patio, raised her hand. "Ms. Banks, A question for you, and for Lorraine. She turned the microphone. Last night, you said your stepmother's final words to you at the bus station were, "No one cares." Lorraine, is that true? Did you say that? Lorraine saw it, a life raft, a chance to reframe, to seize the narrative. Yes, she said, her voice finding a sudden, false strength. Yes, I said something like that. Of course I did. It was a lesson. This world is a hard, cold place. I was teaching her a lesson about standing on her own 2 feet. I was teaching her independence. It was a lesson in tough love, a growing up lesson. I was trying to help her. The room did not just get quiet, it went cold. I saw the AP reporter's jaw tighten. I saw the man from the Tribune actually wince. It was a moral self-immolation. She had just confessed, not just to the act, but to the malice. Harper Quinn, who had been standing silently by the easels, stepped forward. She moved to a laptop connected to a large projector screen that Everett's team had, of course, provided. A growing up lesson that seems to have had a very specific financial and legal component, Harper said, her voice cutting through the silence. The screen lit up. What you see here, Harper continued, is a certified confirmation from the United States Postal Inspection Service. It confirms, as we saw on the easel, that Lorraine's authorization to manage my client's mail expired on her 18th birthday. It also confirms that Lorraine's signature, her personal signature, appears on no fewer than 42 acknowledgement of receipt forms for certified mail after that date. She was not just passively letting it happen. She was actively, physically signing for mail that was not hers. Lorraine's face went white. But we are in the data business, Harper said, and the best data is always visual. She clicked a key. This, she said, is from a security camera at a drive-through vending machine. Timed stamped 6 months ago. The camera, fortunately, has a wide-angle lens. It also captures the return mail slot for the Ashford post office, right next to it. The video was grainy. It was a dark, snowy evening, but it was unmistakable. Lorraine's SUV, her face, illuminated by the dash lights. She was sorting mail. She paused, looked at a thick cream-colored envelope, the kind Everett always used. The video showed her, clearly, not putting it in the outgoing slot. It showed her pushing it, firmly, into the return slot. A collective gasp in the room. That's edited, Lorraine shrieked. That could be anyone. It's time-stamped, Harper said, and it matches the return-to-sender stamp on an education fund check that was mailed to Ms. Banks that exact week. And then, Harper said, her voice relentless, there is the matter of internal family content. She clicked again. The screen changed. It was a screenshot of a text message thread. My God, she's still filming, someone whispered. At the back of the room, Carly, who had been trying to frame the perfect dramatic shot of her mother's breakdown, froze. On the screen, in bright, damning text, was her message to a friend, sent just moments before. Subject, family drama content. Text, Mom's blowing up. It's a total train wreck. This is going to get me so many views. By crisis mode, LOL. Carly let out a small, strangled scream. That's private. You can't show that. She turned and fled, dropping her phone as she ran, pushing through the stunned reporters and out the ballroom doors. She had, in one final, desperate act of self-absorption, shot herself and her mother in the foot. The room was in chaos. The data was not just on the boards, it was live. My grandfather, Everett Banks, stepped up to the microphone. He did not shout. His voice was calm, and the entire room silenced to hear it. We are not here to hunt witches, he said, his gaze sweeping over the press. We are here to restore a line, the line that connects a family, the line that delivers a promise. That line has been cut, and we are simply showing you where, and by whom, the rest is just noise. He stepped back and nodded to me. It was my turn. I took the mic. I looked at the cameras. I looked at my father, who was still frozen, staring at my mother's letter. I am not here to sue for money, I said. The trust is my mother's, and it will be used as she intended, to fix broken systems. I am here to fix the system that left me at a bus stop. I am here to ensure that the data is made public, so this can't happen to anyone else. My mother trusted a bridge. That bridge failed. So we are building a new one. The room was silent for a beat, and then it erupted. Not just in camera flashes, but in applause. It was not polite. It was loud, sustained, and it was for me. A man in a suit stood up in the back row. Ms. Banks, John Harrison, of the Harrison Foundation. We are so moved by your story and by your commitment, we will match, dollar for dollar, the entire first year's funding for the bus stop fund. Consider it doubled. The applause grew louder. I stepped off the stage, the noise washing over me. Lorraine was left alone, a small, toxic island in a sea of departing reporters. As I walked past, she lunged, her hand grabbing my arm. Her grip was like a claw. "Paisley," she hissed, her face pale, her eyes wild. "Please, we can fix this. Just 5 minutes. Alone. We can make a deal. We can fix this." I stopped. I looked down at her hand on my blazer. Then I looked at her face. I was not angry. I was not cold. I was just an engineer. The audit was over. "Lorraine," I said, my voice low. "For her and her alone. There will be no more private conversations. Nothing will ever be said in the dark again. If you have a proposal, you will put it in writing and send it to my attorney. Ms. Quinn, now, please, let go of my arm." She flinched, as if I had struck her. Her hand fell away. I turned and walked toward my grandfather, who was waiting for me at the door. His hand extended. We were not backstage. Everett's team had secured a small, private meeting room just off the main ballroom. It was meant for hotel staff, smelling faintly of bleach and coffee. The press had been held outside. It was just me, Everett, Harper, Lorraine, and Dale. The door clicked shut, and the roar of the ballroom faded to a dull thrum. Lorraine was a different person. The panicked, stammering woman from the stage was gone, replaced by something raw, desperate. Her face was blotchy, her mascara running. "You have to help me," she whispered, looking not at me, but at Everett. They're calling me, my clients, my phone. They're saying fraud. Everett, please, you're a businessman. You understand. This is my reputation, my livelihood." Everett looked at her, his face carved from granite. "Reputation, Lorraine, is a lagging indicator of character. You have your answer." She turned to me. This was the real plea. "Paisley, please, we can't end it like this. A picture, that's all I ask." I just looked at her. "A picture?" "Yes." Her voice cracked, grasping. "A family picture. Me, you, your father. We can release a joint statement. A complex misunderstanding, now resolved. We can say we are healing. It shows unity. It shows grace. It will stop this. It will save us." "Save you," I thought. I did not answer her. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out the faded, cloth-soft $10 bill. I placed it on the small utility table in the center of the room. It looked tiny, insignificant. Then I reached into the file Harper had given me. I took out the photocopy of my mother's letter, the one where she called Lorraine her bridge. I placed it next to the $10 bill. 2 truths, the lie she was built on, and the pittance she left me with. "You want a picture, Lorraine?" I said, my voice quiet, but it cut through the small room. "You want a story? Which one do you want to live with? This one?" I tapped the letter. "The trust you betrayed? Or this one?" I tapped the money. "The value you assigned me." She looked at the 2 items. She could not speak. "It was my fault." The voice was so quiet. I almost did not hear it. It was my father, Dale. He had been standing by the door, his skin a pale, clammy gray. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in what felt like my entire life. It wasn't just her, he said, his voice thick. He pointed a trembling finger at Lorraine. She was loud. She was organized. And I was afraid of the confrontation. I was a coward. He was crying now, silent, pathetic tears. I saw the letters. I saw the boxes from Everett. She said they were too much for you, that it would confuse you, that it was better to make a clean break, and I let her. I didn't want to fight. He fumbled with his wallet, his hands shaking. That postal authorization, the first one, I signed it. I thought it was just for school forms. I didn't even read it. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. I am so sorry. Paisley, I will do anything. I will be a witness. I will sign anything. I'll go to the post office. I'll sign a nullification. I'll tell them it was fraud. I will. I promise. He had offered the one thing he had, his testimony. 10 years too late. His confession was not for me. It was for his own absolution, and I had none to give him. Harper stepped forward. She was all business. She placed her laptop on the table, next to the letter and the money. A verbal apology is insufficient, Harper said, her voice crisp, pulling the room back to the present. A testimony is useful, Mr. Dale, and we will be taking it. But Lorraine, you are the one who held the pen. I looked at Lorraine. I had my solution. It was not revenge. It was a root correction. You're an accountant, Lorraine, I said. So you will understand this. We are going to reconcile the books. You want to save your reputation? You will do it with the one thing you have avoided for 10 years, the truth. I laid out the terms. It was not a negotiation. You will write, by hand, a full public letter. You will address it to me and to Everett Banks. You will admit, in detail, to the unauthorized interception of mail, both before and after the expiration of the postal order. You will apologize, specifically, to Everett, for returning his correspondence. You will apologize to me for obstructing my mother's trust, and you will agree, in that letter, to return any and all benefits, financial or otherwise, you received as a result of this deception, including the fees paid to Barrow and Finch. No, she whispered. No, that's a confession. That's career suicide. Yes, I said. It is a confession. The alternative is that Ms. Quinn, here, walks out of this room and immediately files the federal complaint with the postal inspector, along with the video evidence, the invoices, and the sworn testimony of your husband. You are an accountant. You tell me. Which liability is greater? The complaint is already filed, Harper said, tapping her phone. This is an opportunity to add a mitigating addendum. Lorraine stared at the table, the letter, the money. She knew. She was a systems analyst, too, in her own way. She knew a checkmate when she saw one. Paper, she whispered, her voice dead. I need paper. Harper produced a legal pad and a pen. Lorraine sat. Her hand was shaking so badly she could barely write. Dale stood over her, sobbing. I watched her draft the words. I watched her try to soften them. I watched Harper cross them out. Be specific, Harper instructed. The dates, the intent. It took 20 minutes. When she was done, she was not crying. She was hollow. She signed the bottom. Witnesses, Harper said. She opened the door. The AP reporter and the Channel 4 reporter were standing right there, as she knew they would be. You two, in. They looked startled, but they entered. We need 2 non-related witnesses for a legal attestation, Harper said. She laid the handwritten letter on the table. The reporters read it. Their eyes went wide. "You are witnessing the signature of Lorraine, affirming that this is her statement, made of her own free will." Harper said, "Yes," the AP reporter said, his voice breathy. They signed. Harper took the letter. She scanned it with her phone. She typed. She hit send. "Filed," she said. "The addendum is filed. The letter is now public record, attached to the federal case." Lorraine just put her head in her hands and made a small, broken sound. Everett, who had watched the entire exchange, stepped forward. He looked at me, and his eyes were bright. He put his hand on my shoulder. "Tonight," he said, his voice loud enough for the reporters to hear. "Tonight, no one in this city will ever dare to say no one cares again." He held the door open for me. I walked out, leaving Lorraine and Dale in that small, sterile room with the ghosts of their choices. The ballroom was still full. The applause had died down, but the energy was electric. The press was waiting. The match fund donor was waiting. I walked back onto the stage. I took the microphone. The lights were hot. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you all. The bus stop fund is the first step. It is the immediate relief, but as an engineer, I do not just believe in relief. I believe in empowerment." I nodded to my team at the back. The large projector screen, the one that had shown Lorraine's face, flickered to life. It now showed the Root Swift logo. "My company," I said, "will be launching a new, permanent, and fully funded program. It is called Maps for Kids. We will partner with every youth shelter and transitional home in this state. We will teach these young men and women the skills of the future: data analysis, logistics, and routing systems. We will not just give them a meal, we will give them the blueprint. We will teach them how to draw the map." I pointed to the screen. "And this is not a promise for tomorrow. This is happening right now." The screen changed. It was a live map, my map, the one I had coded in my attic. It showed 3 red dots, my relief vans, repurposed from the snowstorm, and it showed 3 green dots, the 3 largest youth shelters in Northlake. "As we have been speaking," I said, "the first deployment of the bus stop fund is in motion. Those red dots are Root Swift relief vans. They are not carrying generators tonight. They are carrying 100 new laptops, 50 mobile hotspots, and enough food to stock their pantries for a month. They are, as you can see, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, and 6 minutes away from arrival." The room was silent, watching the map, watching the red dots get closer to the green. It was not a speech. It was a live deployment. It was proof of concept. I looked past the cameras. I looked past the donors. I knew, at home, at the shelters, those kids were watching this live stream. I was not looking for approval from the family who had abandoned me. I was looking for the ones who were waiting at their own bus stops. I nodded, just once, at the camera. A promise. I stepped away from the podium. I walked to the small table where my briefcase sat. I took out the $10 bill. The framed one from my office was just a symbol. This one, the original, was my anchor. I opened the binder that held the charter for the bus stop fund. I turned to the first page. I clipped the small, faded bill to the top of the plan. My seed funding, my first investment. "They thought," I said, my voice low, but the microphone caught it, "that they could leave me on the shoulder of the road. They thought I was a rounding error. But today, we draw the on-ramp for everyone else." The first camera flash went off, bright and white, then another, and another. The sound was like thunder. The lights were blinding. The live map on the screen showed the first van arriving at its destination. The lights in the hall began to lower, fading to black, until all that was left was the map, glowing in the dark. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where are you listening from? Let me know in the comments, and share your thoughts on the story so we can chat. Please make sure to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories and like this video. And if you really want to support this channel, please hit that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.